Today we're doing a song by NeighborKid. NeighborKid is a rock and roll singer-songwriter. It's a project from Jordan. Jordan's in the chat there. It's done out of a bedroom studio in Westerly, Rhode Island. Jordan started recording in 2016 in GarageBand, also how I got started, and has slowly improved the sound since back then. So all the tracks by NeighborKid are streaming on a bunch of different platforms. I have all the links if you want to hear more NeighborKid down there in the description. And we're going to just jump right into it. So all right, here we go. So I got a project pulled up here. Thanks for sending this over, Jordan. And the way that I usually get these is just as raw DIs and MIDI drums or live drums, depending on what the case is. In this case, there were some plugins on here that I think were largely Logic stock plugins. What we're looking at here is a project with basically everything stripped out. So I went through all the different tracks here, took off all the plugins, all the effects and processing, and we're going to do this entire thing start to finish. So basically I'm starting with like a raw project here. So the first thing I'm going to do here is just group everything the way that I want it to be grouped so it's easier for me to work with. So it looks like I got some rhythm guitar tracks here. I have some lead guitar tracks here. I have two bass tracks. I'm actually going to kill one of these, and I'll explain why in a minute. We have the drum, the MIDI file for the drums here. I'm using Superior Drummer 3. Everything I'm doing today in Superior Drummer 3, you can actually do in Easy Drummer and basically every other plugin. Hang on, let me change this so you can see Superior Drummer here. There we go. So yeah, Superior Drummer 3, got the MIDI track loaded up, and then I have some vocals and looks like some sound effects down on the bottom. So first and foremost, I listened to this once through, so I know these are the rhythm tracks right here. So I'm going to go ahead and label these. I keep it really simple. And then I'm going to color code them so I know what the hell I'm doing here. There we go. Some orangey stuff. I think this one is another rhythm track. If it's not, we'll fix it later. Okay. Are these the leads? Let's make sure. Yep, those sound like leads. This is the most boring part of mixing, but if you don't do this, it's such a pain in the ass to figure out what you're doing later on. So I'm just going to knock this out real quick. Probably could have done this before the live stream, but maybe some of you want to see this. I don't know. So let's grab the vocals here. I think these are all kind of the same. Actually, we have a couple backing vocals. Let me just jump around for a second. Always the best when you get to hear that. You know what? I think I'm missing some vocal tracks here. Again, I'm just going to close this out real quick. Make sure I got the right file. Yeah, there we go. All right, so let's do that again real quick. Grab the guitars. Give them a color. Yeah, leads there. This is a huge part of the mixing process, screwing something up and having to go back and do all the same shit you just did again. But this is going to get fun very soon, I promise. Let's kill the bass we don't need. And while I'm doing this, the reason that I'm killing that extra bass track is because I'm going to use a plugin called Parallax X. It's Neural DSP plugin. Neural makes incredible plugins, probably my best my favorite plugin manufacturer out there. And one of the things they do that's really cool is for bass, in a lot of cases, you'll have like a couple parallel bass tracks using maybe the same DI, and you'll make one of them super fuzzed out and like nasty, and then you'll have the other one be a little more clean. You can actually do all of that with one bass DI using Parallax. And I find that it saves a lot of time, and it's just creates a really sick and kind of nasty sound. So I'm just going to do that rather than have the doubled up DIs. All right. So, and then I don't know why this matters to me, but the icons just drive me nuts. And the only icon that doesn't drive me nuts is that one. So I'm going to put that one on all of them. Okay. All right. So next thing I'm going to do is set the drums up here. So one of the things that I think is really important, a lot of people are using MIDI drums now, and most are just kind of using the plugin the way that it's intended, which is usually just going to give you a stereo pair. I'm going to turn this into multi-output. And the reason I'm going to do this is because it lets you take a MIDI drum track and basically split it apart in individual drums. You can process all of them independently. And that's what I want to do here. This is the stock kit from Superior Drummer. I don't know what's in here. Like some Gretsch, Slingerland. Kind of sounds like shit. It's not good for metal. So I love the Death and Darkness expansion pack. If there's something worth spending money on, it's definitely Superior Drummer 3, and then also the Death and Darkness expansion pack. If you're making money or music like this, this is definitely the one to use. So I have a kit that I've already made here that I really like. We have a Black Beauty, which is the snare I play in real life, some Gretsch toms, and bunch of nice sounding cymbals. So now I'm going to go into the mixer, and this is where I'm going to start routing this as if it's an actual drum kit, right? So, and I'm actually mixing live drums. This is going to make a huge difference in the drums not sounding superficial and robotic. So I'm going to go ahead and add a bunch of auxiliary channels here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to route each of these mics to those auxiliary channels. So I'm just going to group all the kicks together in the interest of time. Normally I would probably process the kick mics independently, but like I said, I'm going to try and get this thing done in an hour. So I'm going to do the same thing with the toms. There's not a lot of toms in this song, so I think we can just process all the toms together. And then let's see, I'm going to do the close mics on the cymbals all together. And if there's like, you know, an audiophile engineer in the audience, they're probably hating what I'm doing right now, but I actually think that it doesn't make much of a difference. I'm just going to throw all this stuff together. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn all of this crap off. So when you open the plugin up, it has all this like built-in processing that Superior Drummer thinks is the right processing for these drums. I think it sucks. I'm going to just turn all this off and do all of it myself. Let's see, get all these guys out of there. And these are buses. I'm going to do the same thing here. I just don't want any of this stuff in there because what I really want is I want to get a clean slate that is as if I'm mixing live recorded stuff. And let me figure out how to label all this stuff down here now. So each of these channels corresponds to one of those outs that I just routed. Let's see, snare, hi-hat, toms. Just call that cymbals, overheads, and rooms. And if I did this right, let me fix these up real quick. And then if I did this right, we're going to be able to see that these ambient mics, which are the room mics in the actual DAW, are receiving channel 13 and 14 from Superior Drummer. So let me just clean this up. Again, this stuff is just like the pain in the ass, like eat your spinach type stuff, but I figured it's worth showing because I find that it does make a very big difference. Okay. All right, let's see how we're doing here. I'm going to make, if you're not seeing anything, just give this 1 second. I'm just going to bring these channels in. And I just did a video on YouTube that shows you exactly how to do this too, if you want to check it out. All right, so now we have all of our drums coming out to independent channels here. Okay, so that's good. Next, I'm going to pick some tones. So I'm going to start with one of the rhythm guitars. Okay, and for this, I'm going to want to, since we have 2 rhythm guitar tracks, I'm ultimately going to hard pan them. And I want to find 2 complementary amp sims. So I want like kind of a crispy, biting type of amp sim, and then I want something a little woodier so that when I pan them, they sort of balance each other out. So let's start with a JCM. Some of these riffs remind me of a little bit of like the Best of Every Time I Die type riffs. And Every Time I Die is usually running things through a JCM. So I'm going to use a Marshall amp sim here. I'm using one from Bogren Digital. Bogren Digital makes really great stuff. Definitely an amp sim that's worth your time. So let's see how that sounds just right out of the box. All right, sounds pretty good. Let me see. Bump that up a little bit. I want to get rid of the effects. I think we'll leave the pedal. And I always use an IR, an impulse response for the cab that's not the stock IR. And there's some really good ones out there from York Audio. So this York Audio IR that I'm pulling up here is based on, and it's an actual Marshall 4x12. And so I'm going to be using the Marshall head through the Marshall cab in a manner of speaking here, right? I'm going to use a mix since I don't have the option to balance between two here. And we're just going to cruise through these until we find one we like. That's closer. Ooh, I like 3. Yep, 3 is the one. That sounds like it's probably a 57 and a 121. All right, starting to get there. Let's get the tone going on our second guitar. And to balance this out, I'm going to grab a 5150. So I'm using the Nolly plugin from Neural DSP. Most of my shit is from Neural DSP. They're just totally awesome. And the third amp in here is based very faithfully on a 5150. I think they did a really good job with this. So I'm going to use this one. I'm going to bring the gain down just to dial the tone. And that Marshall was really bright. I'm going to make this one a little bit darker to create some balance. This setting here, like when everything is dialed at like 1 or 2 o'clock on the bass, mid, and treble, this is like always great on a 5150. So I'm not going to waste a bunch of time here. Beef up the low end with some resonance, and I might just go all the way on the presence because this is not a super present amp. All right, let's throw some overdrive on there. Overdrive on everything. Overdrive for me, always 0 on drive, 12 o'clock on tone, and cranked all the way on level. All right, we're starting to get there. The reason it doesn't sound crusty enough is because we got to get the impulse response on there. So this dropped on my other screen here, but I also, York Audio has an impulse response for the 5150 too. So I'm going to have basically a Marshall half stack and a 5150 half stack on the other side. And I'm going to grab, let's see, a 57. It's a little bit thicker, which is what I want. And then I'm going to throw a 121 on the other side. The Royer just does a good job of like adding some woodiness and some low end to this. And this song should have like a thick low end. That, like I said, this kind of reminds me of Every Time I Die. Some of the riffs a little bit knocked loosey. Both of those were produced by Will Putney, and if you listen to his stuff, the low end is like massive. He's not scooping it at all. All right, so let's see what these sound like hard panned. All right, starting to sound like metalcore. Let's do the leads. So for the leads, general thinking, conventional thinking would say that you want like a real trebly lead. I like a really fat lead because usually it cuts right down the middle of the frequency spectrum in a way that can kind of get around the rhythm guitars. And I pretty much always use this Rev C amp from Amp Knob. It's based on a Marshall, or sorry, a Mesa Boogie something or other. I don't know exactly what, but let's see how that sounds on that lead. Okay, and I'm not going to use the matched cab. I'm going to load another impulse response here. See how we're doing on time. Ooh, this is going to be tight. So the Zilla 2x12, this is just a super fat bottomed cab, and therefore I think it's going to be perfect for this. I'm going to grab a V30 on one side. Let's see here. Yeah, that's thick the way that I'm looking for here. All right, let's hit the other one. I'm going to use the same amp, but a different cab. So that's a good trick. Anytime you're mixing with guitars on either side and you're using the same amp, just use a different cab and it'll give you enough of a difference in sound that you kind of get some thickness. So I'm going to use the Zilla, but I'm going to use a different mic here. No, you know what? Let's do this. Instead of the V30, I'm going to do the 75 on the other side, and we'll do a 121. All right, we're getting there. Let's hear it with the guitars. All right, let's do the bass. So this is, I'm going to grab another Neural DSP plugin here. Do Parallax. And this is what I mean. Parallax is sick because you basically have 3 different bands here that you can process independently. So if you want to grind the shit out of your high end, you can do that in this amp without processing the other stuff. So I'm going to do a nice big low end here. Let's just dial this in. Certain context. Okay, starting to get there. Bring the mids up a little bit. And so you can get really grindy on the mid here. And then I want this to be cutting through. Let's hear how this is doing at the high end. All right, now let's EQ it a little bit. I'm going to boost the low end even more. Give it a little bite there. So this 1100 boost, that's going to help it cut through the rhythm guitars. Let's see if it's working. Something I think a lot of people don't realize is when you're listening to rhythm guitar tone, you're actually listening to the bass and the rhythm guitar. So you want the bass to be filling frequencies the rhythm guitar isn't and kind of melding into one tone. So if we nailed this, that's what it's going to sound like after processing. All right, so we haven't done anything to these tracks yet other than pick the tones. And I think we're already starting to get a little bit closer, which is as it should be. So I like to get my tones all out there before I start messing with them because, you know, that way, I think the biggest mistake you can make is over-processing with this kind of music. So I'm going to really consciously try not to do that, which is why I'm spending all this time up front on the tone. And I think, of course, we're clipping, love clipping. Let me turn this down a little bit so that stops. All right, now we're not clipping. Okay, so we could kind of get into the vocals. I'm going to leave the vocals alone for now, and I'm going to just get in here and start processing these drums. That's the foundation of everything. If your drums sound bad, the whole song is bad. So let's get this right first. And that just sounds like a really wimpy kick. We can do better than that. So I'm going to take the rumble out of the low end with some EQ. I'm going to boost this part, which is hitting you in the chest. Make sure we're not clipping the plug in. Bring some click in up here. Let's see if we got some boxiness. Yeah, we don't want that. Let's get that out of there. All right, good enough. We can come back and do more there later if we want to. Let's hit it with some compression. Do relatively fast attack. I'm going to take this thing up to 8:1 ratio. And for this kind of music, I'm down to go all the way up to like 10 decibels of gain reduction. And if we really want to make it fat, we could throw some saturation on here. My go-to for kick saturation would be Decapitator. Go with a dark tone. Maybe that's a little too much. A little bit goes a long way. There. I feel like that's just enough. All right, let's get the snare in there. I'm just grabbing a part of the song I can just loop over and over again while I'm working this stuff out. So let's get all the rumble out of the low end here. This part is where the fat in the snare lives. Obviously, you don't want it all the way up here, but right here is nice. I think like 1 or 2 decibels right there is quite nice. I'm going to try and catch some of the actual snares on the bottom of the drum. That's usually in like the 4 to 6K range here. So we'll get some of those. See, got some shit in there that I definitely don't want. And then I like to throw an air shelf on the snare too, just to really get the crack. This kind of music should have like huge drums. Can't have wussy drums here. One way to really make it cut through is with an air shelf. And all that means is like we're boosting some high frequencies using an EQ, but I like to use an EQ that has musical quality. So Mag EQ4 just sounds beautiful. It's not transparent. It's adding some color. I'm gonna give it like 1 decibel at 10K. All right, let me just group my cymbals together here. Let's see. Why are we not getting cymbals? Because it's just a crash. There we go. All right, so let's just do this one since we're getting overheads here. Overheads, I'm going to cut up to about where the snare is because it's a nice way to reinforce the snare. I'm going to scoop some boxiness out of the middle. I'm going to find the harshness from the crash and typically the hi-hat. It's that whistle that you can hear when I really crank this frequency range here. What I'm using Pro Q3, which I didn't really explain, this is I think the best plugin for EQ because it really lets you cheat. You can see visually where all the frequencies are, and that just gives you an advantage of immediately knowing where you need to cut and boost and stuff. So I think that's pretty good there. I'm going to give this an air shelf too, and just listen to what happens to the cymbals here. I love what this thing does to cymbals. Like it just puts like that sheen on the top of the cymbals, which kind of puts the drums up in your face. So I like that. If you really want to make it grimy, you can throw some tape saturation on the overheads. So let's see what that's doing here. I actually like that. I'm going to make this tape slightly aged. I'm going to use type 4 on master, which is the cleanest sounding one, and throw some light noise reduction. This NR comp thing is based on the Dolby patented noise reduction that was on all those cassette tapes. I like absolutely love tape compression. I put this on as much as I possibly can. And finally, we'll do the rooms. So I think that we're not getting some of the mics in the rooms that we want. Yeah, it sounds like we're just getting the snare in the rooms. Something I forgot to mention that, now I think this is a good time to mention it, is bleed is a good thing when you're using MIDI drums. When you're recording live drums, you try to cut bleed out as much as you can. Bleed in MIDI drums is great because it's what makes drums sound real. It makes it sound like you're actually in a room, with the drums when they're getting bleed from other instruments. So I'm going to enable the bleed on my room mics so that I get like a really robust room sound here. Especially on the cymbals. I definitely want the cymbals in there because good room sound is just going to glue this kit together and it's going to start to make it sound a little more organic and a little less mechanical. So bringing all these in, I'm just turning on the bleed for all these different drum pieces here, and you can hear it's starting to come through those mics on the rooms now. And then we're going to slam the room mics with compression to just like really put them right in your face, which is what I like. That's what's going to give the drum kit that big aggressive sound. It's cranking the room mics higher than you think you probably should. So got some bleed here. Do the last one. And I'm usually kind of gentle with compression in most areas. The drums are definitely an exception, and specifically the rooms. So I'm going to go with the 1176 compressor, which I have been using and neglected to mention. This I think is the best compressor for aggressive music like this. And I'm going to go with a 20-to-1 ratio and just like absolutely crush these. Let's bring it down a little bit. Now let's hear it with the rest of the drums. So now is a good time, I think, to just bust these drums. So I'm just sending them all to a bus so that I can start manipulating the drums with a click. And you can hear this is sounding a lot more, in my opinion, like a live drum kit, which is the point. And that's why I spent the time on all the mics and all that shit that I was doing before and the rooms. I love using a transient shaper on the snare just to like add, this is basically just making your drummer hit harder. And I usually will go to like, this is a transient shaper. It stretches the transient out, so you just get more of that initial attack. So that's sounding heavier. Let's throw the compression on the snare. Do 8 to 1. All right. Starting to get there. Starting to sound like the sauce a little bit. Let's throw some decapitator on there too. Maybe that's too crazy. Maybe not. I like it. It's going in the red, but I like it. Okay. So now I'm going to isolate the kick and the bass. And this is an area where there's some nice tricks that you can do to glue these two together. This is the backbone of the rhythm section. You don't want the bass and the kick fighting each other for frequencies. So what I'm going to do is pull up the kick, and then I'm going to do let me put some EQ on the bass. I'm going to do a visual pass on where I have frequency overlap between these two instruments. So let's bring it up to the fundamental frequency. Let's get the kick visual on there. And the red is going to show me where the kick is hitting. So I'm going to do a little dip there to make some room for the kick. And then I'm going to go to the kick and do the same thing to make some room for the bass. So I'm going to dip that kick, maybe just like a decibel or two, where I see the bass peaking. So they're starting to sit together a little better. Next trick I'm going to do here is I'm going to do some multi-band compression, and I'm going to side chain the kick to the bass, and I'm going to just focus on those low frequencies. And what this is going to do basically is it's just going to nudge the low frequencies on the bass down a decibel or two whenever the kick hits, and it's going to glue them together, make it so that they're fighting a little bit less over those frequencies. So where's the kick here? There we go. So I'm just dialing the input here until I see that I'm only losing about a decibel of gain reduction. All right, you should be able to hear that they're kind of starting to stick together a little better. Yeah, it's sounding nice to me. All right, let's bust the guitars, get them processed. And I think that you're not supposed to do this, but I don't understand why, because it feels much easier than the alternative. I'm going to just mix this in a vacuum real quick first. So which one? That's my JCM. Let's EQ this. So this is the first place that you can start to solve the mud problem that you're going to have later. I'm going to bring this up fairly high. Let's get the mud out. All that's mud. Let's get rid of it. There's usually like a radar ping somewhere in here that I want to get rid of too. Yeah, right there. And then if you want the bite, that's usually going to be in like 2000 to 2500. This is a kind of a thicker sound I'm looking for, so I might go lower and I'm going to boost. If you wanted to do like a really modern sound, you could do a low pass somewhere around here to take the hiss out. Like this. I actually don't like that. I think that's too polite. I'm going to keep it in. And I'm actually going to boost it a little bit. So we're getting some attitude from that guitar. So I never put compression on individual guitar tracks. Instead, I just go back to my trusty decapitator, which I like to put on everything. And I just want to make this like a feral, angry guitar here. So here we go. Let's see how this goes. Oh, yeah. That feels like it's going to grab you by the throat. All right. I want to get rid of all this automation, which is why it's getting turned down. I think I'm going to throw a transient shaper on here too, just to make that pick attack a little bit stronger, so that we really get the chug on those down picks. Yep. All right, let's do the other one. I love the way 5150 sound. It's so awesome. Okay, take out the rumble here. Take out the mud. You can hear that like ping in there. I think we're getting some harshness over here too. Let's clean that up. Boost the high end. All right, now we should start to be in metalcore territory here. Let's see what this sounds like with the bass and the drums in there. All right, we're starting to get there. Now let's throw some compression on the drum bus so that we can glue it in and get a little more aggression out of it. And I'm going to be looking for probably like 3 to 5 decibels of gain reduction here. Slower attack, faster release. And these settings in the API 2500, which is the bus compressor I'm using here, these are going to dictate aggression. So new is a more aggressive tone than old. Loud thrust is aggressive. Hard, in the case of the knee, might be a little too aggressive. Let's try medium. And then another thing that I love for just making really in-your-face drums is a clipper. This just shaves some of the frequency peaks off of the signal, and it creates kind of a musical distortion. It also gives you more headroom because it makes the drum sound louder without actually adding anything. Starting to come together. Now I'm going to process the rhythm guitar bus. Shit, 20 minutes. Let's see if we can do it. I'm going to boost a little bit in this like 150 zone. This is like, you know, perennially a mud zone, but I actually think boosting this is nice for this kind of music. You can hear it kind of sticking to the bass. Okay, let's get this out. And then maybe we'll do a little air shelf action here too, just to put some air on top of these. Okay, and then finally for buses, rather than using the like diode style, what's the word, saturation from a decapitator, I like tape saturation here. Tape is awesome. In our physical studio, we're gonna have a reel-to-reel tape. That is going to enable us to actually do this analog. Tape just creates such a killer sound. But rather than sketch cassette, I'm going to use the Slate Digital one. And listen to what that's doing to the low end. Watch here, it's off. Okay. All this stuff is a little hot, so I'm going to level it a little bit here. Let me label this. So I'm looking for the rhythm guitars to peak between like 6 and 10. Bass probably 10 to 12. Minus 3 on the drums. Okay, let's hit the leads. Okay, so for the leads, I actually do. Let me cue this first. And I'm not going to EQ this to pop in the high end because the 2500 is where I have the bite from those rhythm guitars. Let me actually put those rhythm guitars in here so we can see that. So you can see the rhythm guitars are peaking right around here. So I'm actually boost next to that so that these are kind of fitting together and not competing. I'll grab the wrong one. Hang on. Copy this. That's still way too polite, so I am going to throw some gentle compression here just to keep that lead up in your face. I like the LA3A for this. Just like 2 decibel gain reduction there. And in the interest of time, I'm just going to literally copy those exact settings to the other one. Because why not? Let's bust those. All right, now I'm going to just do some little EQ action on the bus. Take out some mud, see if there's harshness. Get rid of that. And now I'm going to throw a third saturator that I like on here, black box, which I like for leads. The reason I like black box is it has this air button, which just puts air on it, and I like that. All right, let's hear it with the rhythm guitars and the bass. All right, I think good enough for now. I'm just going to copy paste the rhythm guitar setting from my rhythm pair onto this other one. So it looks like we have like kind of like an intro hit and maybe like a transition hit on one guitar. We're going to have fun with that in a minute. Let's see what it sounds like. If it sounds a little thin, we're going to fix that. We're going to fix that on the mix bus. So now let's hit the vocals. All right, so the challenge with vocals in metal is that they occupy exactly the same range of the frequency spectrum as the rhythm guitars, the bass, the drums, and everything else. So we're going to do some EQ cuts just to make this fit in the mix a little bit. There's always a nasal boxy sound in here. Let's get rid of that. I'm going to put a low shelf over here too. That low end information doesn't really do much for the vocals. Little harsh right there. Bring this down a little bit. Sometimes it's nice to boost like somewhere over here in like 4 to 6K. Let's see. Okay, we'll come back to that in a minute. Let's get some compression in there, and we're going to be aggressive. Do 8-to-1, fastest possible attack. So that's my first compressor. That's doing the heavy lifting. And then I'm going to add a second stage of compression, and I'm going to use something a lot more gooey and analog sounding with the LA2A here. This is like the same vocal chain Sabrina Carpenter uses too. This is like the pop vocal chain. And I think it works really well in aggressive music. Here, let's see it in a vacuum here.
He'll chew your ear off for an hour.
Okay, starting to get that thickness. And I'm going to put a ton of saturation on here just to make it nasty.
He'll chew your ear off for an hour. He'll chew your ear off for an hour. He'll chew your ear off for an hour.
Okay.
He'll chew your ear off for an hour. He'll chew your ear off for.
Interesting. Spacebar stopped working. That's cool. Let's throw some tape on there too.
He'll chew your ear off for an hour. He'll chew your ear off for an hour. He'll chew your ear off
Sometimes
for an hour.
Cool to totally clip tape saturation. Let's see.
He'll chew your ear off for.
Yeah.
He'll chew your ear off.
That's too much.
He'll chew your ear off for an hour. 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 He'll chew.
I personally like it. It's clipping, but you know, whatever. So I know that the rest of these vocal tracks are kind of also leads, except for these 4 down here. So I'm going to copy and paste this processing. But first I want to throw some wet effects on here. So when I'm doing reverb, delay, that kind of thing, I always do it as an auxiliary send, not on the actual track. And that gives it room to actually let that real voice shine through before you start hearing the processing. So what's going on with this thing here? All my buttons aren't working, but we'll get through it. So this is Valhalla Verb. This is my favorite reverb plugin for this purpose.
He'll chew your ear off for an hour. He'll chew your ear off for an hour.
Let's get that dialed in. I'm going to throw a second reverb on here. So my first reverb is quick. My second one's going to be long. And we're just going to play with these to taste. Go with vintage verb again. Longer pre-delay for the longer.
He'll chew your ear off for an hour. He'll chew your ear off for an hour.
And even though there's knobs to put like a high and low pass in the plugin, I'm going to throw some EQ after the plugin on the send, just so that I'm not getting a bunch of like really high frequency information back from the reverb, because it doesn't really do much other than make the guitars hard to hear.
He'll chew your ear off for an hour. He'll chew.
Now I think we need a little more low end in that EQ now that we have the processing on there.
He'll chew your ear off for an hour. He'll chew your ear off for an hour. He'll chew your ear off for an hour.
This is like every vocalist's worst nightmare, just hearing your vocals soloed over and over again. All right. So last thing I'm going to do is a wet effect on the vocals here. I think we might actually get this thing done on time. I'm going to throw some delay. You normally don't hear this, but it just kind of thickens things up. So I'm going to throw some quarter note delay on a send here. Keep the feedback low. Mix at 50 is probably good.
He'll chew your ear off for an hour. He'll chew your ear off for an hour.
All right. I feel pretty good about that. So I'm just going to copy this and paste it across all the other lead vocal tracks because I believe they're all kind of serving the same purpose in the song. Let's hear what it sounds like all together now.
He'll suckle on the teeth of your attention.
Okay, so got the vocals bust now. I'm going to throw some bus processing on here. I'm going to do some EQ again. I got some harshness maybe here.
Charlie's a fucking drag. I tried to warn you. I
badass scream right there, dude. All right, let's throw some bus compression on there. API 2500 again. Going to be pretty aggressive with this too. Fast attack since we're dealing with vocals. I think I want a little more verb. Let's see. Yep. Why not? That might be too heavy-handed, but we're working fast here. Let's hear it all together. One thing I forgot, very important. So right now the drum hits are perfect, and we don't want them to be perfect because humans are not perfect. So I'm actually going to go in here and randomize some time changes that are very slight, and also some velocity changes because no one hits the drum exactly as hard every single time they hit it, right? So I'll just do it blanket in the interest of time. So I'm going to do probably a 12 on the timing randomization, and yeah, like we'll do a 12 on the velocity randomization too. So that's just going to create some imperfections in the drum performance, which are going to make it feel a little more human. Charlie's a fucking drag. I tried to warn you. Okay. Let's do these backing vocals real quick. Let me see what we got here. I think we got 2 highs and 2 lows. Yep. All right. So that's my high. Let me get rid of all the automation here. Getting down to the wire, folks. Let's see if we're going to pull this off. So I'm going to just process these identically in the interest of time, since I told you guys I'd be done in an hour. I'm free falling. Nice little Tom Petty homage there. Let's take some of the muddiness out down here. I like to dip where the lead vocals are peaking so that these things fit together, and I think boosting 6K is good for higher vocals like that. We're going to slam these with the compression. I'm going to use distressor for the backup. We'll go fastest attack, medium release. Let's throw some built-in saturation there that comes with the plugin. We're just going to copy paste that. Push these out a little bit, panning wise. I'm free falling. I mean, that sounds pretty legit. Some Sabrina Carpenter processing there for you again. There's the dirty one. We like this. Let's throw this EQ on it. Get the mud out. I hear some harshness around here. I'm just going to dip that. And we can do a low pass on the lower vocals. Get some of the sibilance out of it. Okay. Let's slam it with distressor. Compression again. All right, let's see what this sounds like all together. Just the backup vocals. Let me bust those together. I'm free falling. I'm free falling. I'm free falling. Coming together. I'm free falling. All right. Process the bus. So if you want to DS on your own, you can just do a dynamic cut where those sibilants are hitting. So this is only going to push down when we get those S's and T's. I'm free falling. I'm free falling. I'm free. Okay. Starting to sound nice and evil. Let's get some compression on the backing vocals. Micro shift is nice and backup vocals. It creates like a slight delay between the left and right and a slight pitch change between the left and right, and it just pushes things out wide. There's this native setting that's called backing vocal thickener that I like. It's coming together. So last but not least, with 4 minutes on the clock, let's hit the mix bus. I'm going to do some EQ, cut out the rumble on the low end, and then just look for frequencies I don't like and dip them out. Got one there. I use dynamic dips on the master or on the mix bus so that I'm not messing with it. Yeah, we don't want that one. I'm going to throw tape saturation in here again because I like to put this thing everywhere, and I'm going to do it before the compression. Let's get an air shelf in between those. You can see I find the plugins I like and I just put them everywhere. Put a little air on it. Low end processing, I think, is really important for music like this. It's where you get that really thick low end. This is like a $15 plugin called Basement that does a really good job. What it does is it introduces harmonic saturation in the low end zone, and it just beefs it up. You'll see here. I'm going to throw even more saturation on here. Black box. There's a preset that I quite like called Mix Bus 1. All right. Throw a little stereo imaging on there. This is like one of the only Ozone plugins I use. I try not to use them because I don't have a lot of control over what they do, but this one's just sick. It just finds the different frequency bands that you should be widening and then gives you the ability to widen them independently. I don't know how it does it, but there it does. So I'm usually going to go below 120. I'm going to make everything mono. So you can see with the spectral graph thing here that it's right down the middle in terms of where you're hearing it. That's really important to the modern metal sound, is getting that nice wide effect. All right, next I'm going to throw a plugin on there called Golfos. This just does kind of its own on-the-fly dynamic EQ to boost frequencies it thinks we like and cut frequencies it thinks we don't. I don't totally get it, but I always just do this on 15 and 5. So it's recovering frequencies it thinks we like at 15%, and it's suppressing frequencies it thinks we don't like at about 5%. So we're at 5 o'clock. If you got to go, I get it, but I'm going to be done in probably 3 minutes here. Throw some bus compression here. Again, and for mix bus compression, slow as possible attack, fast as possible release, gentle as possible settings, and I'm really only looking for like 1 decibel gain reduction. This is just to glue it together. think that snare is brutal enough. We need more snare. Let's put some reverb on that snare. This is what we need. So close, guys, I promise. Thanks for sticking it out with me. Let's get that snare to really pop out. Let's throw some verb on the drum bus. These are things that you don't really hear until you're at like the very end of the road, you know. I want to make that drum bus a little bit washier. I'm going to do that with a very mild ambient setting that I like called drum air. One last stage of tape sector. All right, and then finally mastering. I'm going to do some lightweight mastering. I lied. This is another thing I use Ozone for. The reason I like this maximizer is because it gives you a couple different things that are really nice. So it's got the character, which is aggressive in this case. You can do some upward compression, so bring some of those quieter frequencies up. Let's boost the input here until we start to hit the ceiling. This is what's going to make it stream ready. You can clip the entire mix bus using a clipper like I did on the drum bus. Let's throw some transient emphasis in there. I think those guitars might be a little too polite still. Let's figure that out. And this is probably the last thing I'm going to do. I'll do some cleanup tweaks after this, and Jordan, we can hook up and see if you want to post this somewhere, but maybe we'll just let the song play through as is right at the end, and then I'll take us out. Charlie's! Oh, you know what? We're going to do one last little fun thing. This is actually the last thing. Actually, two last things. I think it would be fun to just have a little fun with that. Let's do this. I'm going to automate the first band in the EQ to go way up and then come way down, and you're going to see what that does. Maybe that's a little too silly. Let's see. Fuck it, you know? All right. And we need some 808s, and then we're going to call it a day. Let me see if I can get in here real quick and just grab an 808 out of Splice. And if I can't, you're just going to have to use your imagination. Yeah, of course, Splice is choosing not to crash, which is a great time for that. Let's see if we got any in the stock Logic stuff that we like. All right, let's see here. Oh, cool. I just had to threaten it, and now Splice is back on. Found a really beefy drop C one here. Yeah, let's see how that does. Is that where I want it? No, I want it there.
Cubicle Charlie, this one at every party, always feeling sorry for himself. He's all up in the...
I'm into that.
Charlie's a fucking truck.
Where's the other one? Let's just do one after every one of these guys. Okay. I think we're done. I'm going to go ahead and hit play. Let's hear what the finished product sounds like. I'll tweak it a little on the fly.
Cubicle Charlie, this one at every party, always feeling sorry for himself. He's all up in the corner, talking to him is torture. Don't say I didn't warn you about the cards he's dealt. He'll chew your ear off for an hour. He'll suckle on the teeth of your attention. He fantasizes about headed west, where the sky is huge and the rocks are red. Charlie's a fucking drag. I tried to warn you. I tried to warn you. He'll bitch about his job, his boss with no sunlight. He'll kill the vibe, he'll turn you off and suck out all your life. But then this hot-ass Carly, the life of every party, never says she's sorry for anything. Always screaming karaoke, confidently off-key. Someone ought to tell that girl she can't sing.
Uh-oh.
A flash of a smile. Good job is
Shit, I'm going to have to increase my buffer speed here. Hey. Oh, that's all I got. See how we
at
do.
least for a while. She'll rob you blind of all your power. It's gonna be object of her affection.
Let's ease off of that.
Seasons sitting home from way out west.
Oh boy. Computer's frying. Give it a sec to simmer. We'll see if we can get through the rest of the song. If not, we'll post it later. Hopefully you guys are hearing what we're doing.
When the Christmas is here in a tight red dress.
Maybe if we take this off.
Oh, now check out Carly, check it out Charlie. She's screaming, free falling. Look at Charlie, looking back at Carly. I'm screaming, free falling. Stumbling into his arms for a hopeless man. The mic is charged, she drops it then into his hands, and in a trance he pops his dance. He screams free. I'm free falling. Singing free. I'm free falling.
No, so close.
I'm free. I'm free falling.
All right. We did it. 70 minutes, not 60. not bad for a first try. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Jordan, let's sync up later, see if we want to put this song up somewhere. Again, if you want to hear more stuff like this, follow me on TikTok, Very Friendly Dave. I'll probably do another one of these in the not distant future. If you want to hear more from NeighborKid, and you really should, check out the description. You can see where his music is streaming everywhere. And thanks for stopping by, guys. Catch you next time.